We read earlier that standing at the foot of Sinai, well, believe it or not, in our Torah portion this week, Exodus 18 through 20, we are literally standing at the foot of Sinai. We're going to get the Ten Commandments this week. But the name of this week's Torah portion is striking. It's Yitro, Jethro in English. It's striking not only because Jethro is the non-Jewish father-in-law of Moses. He's a Midianite priest. But also because the greatest moment in the history of our people up to this point happens in the Torah portion, which bears the name of a non-Jewish hero. The early and later rabbis therefore asked a logical question. If no event in the history of the Jewish people can equal our covenant with God at Mount Sinai, which brought the Jewish people into existence as a people, why are the Ten Commandments in a portion named after a Gentile, a Midianite priest, Yitro? Is it because of Yichus, which is lineage, pedigree, because he's Moses' father-in-law? Not likely. The importance of Jethro is not that he was related to Moses, but that he taught Moses how to lead. I've had a tough time this week finding a relationship that is closer and more explicit than the relationship between Moses and his father-in-law. Every time this man is introduced, it's the father-in-law of Moses, Moses' father-in-law. And he's the one who teaches Moses how to lead. He sees Moses teaching and leading and judging all by himself, and he was so close to his son-in-law, he wasn't afraid to say, "Son, you're crazy. You're going to wear yourself out along with this nation you're trying to lead. This responsibility is just too much for one person. You can't do it all alone. You need help. Get others to help you." So this practical advice, I think, earns Jethro, Yitro, the Gentile teacher, maybe the top billing for this week's Torah portion. But there's another reason why it's significant, that it's named after someone who isn't Jewish. It comes the week after, for those of you who weren't here last week, we read about an arch evil character named Amalek. Amalek personified utter evil because of his nation's merciless attack on women, children, the defenseless. So when you contrast the darkness of Amalek with the light of this week's Jethro, you get the full picture of the world beyond the Jews. Because not only is Jethro not bent on destroying the Jewish people, Yitro, which is his real name, Yitro is the kindred spirit, the Gentile who understands the goodness of the Jewish mission, the Christian neighbor who is cognizant of the one God and of God's presence in the world, or Muslim, or Hindu, or Buddhist, or whatever, who's cognizant of God's presence through the teachings of the Jewish people. Yitro reminds us that it is wrong to assume that beneath the skin of every non-Jew lurks an anti-Semite. Some Jews are still suffering from that misperception. Beneath the skin of every human face lies the very spark of God, and maybe even a Yitro. So this leads to a third reason why this week's Torah portion is named after a Gentile, to remind us that the mission of the Jew, as Elie Wiesel put it, has never been to make the world more Jewish. The mission of the Jew has been to make the world more human. Our task as Jews is to bring the entire world to the idea of ethical monotheism, of one God who cares most about the way we treat each other. And Yitro represents everyone and anyone who keeps alive the message of oneness. Now, as many of you know, and as I shared, I flew to Cambodia back and forth last week. The jet lag still hasn't hit. I don't recommend going there. It takes 2 days to get there, 2 days to get back, 7 days total. I spent last Shabbat leading services in Phnom Penh. Yes, there is a Jewish community there. Wherever there's suffering, there are Jews. And with the chief Buddhist leader there, the Venerable Yoshat Kemakaro. And, you know, I used to, wrongly, and many of us do, associate Buddhism with Jew booze, or just meditation, which is a beautiful aspect of Buddhism. And many of us are harried and looking for a meditation group, and so we think of Buddhism, or we think of the Dalai Lama. But what I learned from this top revered monk is so much reverence and shared message of compassion, loving kindness, and ending evil. The sign that he asked me to translate into Hebrew, that he's placed all over Cambodia, and these are the original Buddhists, not the ones in Tibet and the Dalai Lama. The Theravadas are the older Buddhists in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. It says 3 things. Stop doing evil, cultivate goodness, and purify the mind. Lo la'asot ra, l'tapeach et hatov, l'taher et hamachshavot. It's the same message. But what's strange to me is, can you imagine, soon there will be halfway around the world throughout Cambodia signs in Khmer, English, French, and Hebrew, which tell people not to do evil, to cultivate good, and to purify the mind. So it's not just Jethro. Many of you, in fact, we have friends here, I believe, from Bartlett United Methodist Church. And we all know that one God means one humanity, and only in America would you have a friendship park where Muslims, Methodists, and Jews are building a friendship park on Houston Levy Road. You'll recall that in Genesis, when Abraham was told by God that through him all the nations of the world will be blessed. You know that Ruth, the great-great-grandmother of King David, from whom the Messianic age will come, was herself a convert to Judaism? The rays of Judaism are supposed to extend out to the world, to all people, not just Jews. Or let me give you, don't listen to me, listen to our most sacred text after the Bible, the Talmud, the Mishnah. It asks, who is wise? What's the answer? One who learns from every person. It's not just some of our best friends or family relatives aren't Jewish. Moses' closest relative and advisor wasn't Jewish either. So I learned from the response to my talk last weekend in Cambodia that we Jews have a great deal to offer a Buddhist nation, even around the world, and we have a lot to learn from not only them, but from everyone. The only Torah portion named for a non-Jewish hero this week reminds us that we have a lot to learn from God's children who are utterly different than you. We can learn, live, and hopefully share with those who follow different paths to the same God who loves us all and who is waiting on us to heal this fractured world. And let us all say, Amen.